All right, Emily. I think sometimes it takes a second to buffer. I'm so glad that you joined me today. I'm sure people will appreciate hearing your story so much. I was just reading some of your posts today, actually, in preparation for this interview, and like I've seen your content before, definitely, but it just really struck me everything you've been through and overcome. And I would love audience just hear from your own mouth just a bit about your healing story, maybe how things were for you when they were at their worst and kind of the things that you feel like contributed to you getting really ill.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. And your content was absolutely a blessing for me along my journey. Just to know that there's somebody else out there who comes from great suffering and is seeing the other side of it. But my suffering was twofold. It was mental and it was physical. Um, and I didn't know that the physical was there because the mental was so loud. And it was my triage that I was just like, okay, I'm probably going to take my own life, so I need to make sure and address this first. And then once I addressed my mental health, then my physical health, I was able to see that that was just as much of a problem as well. So for me personally, I in 2018, the fall of 2018, my bipolar disorder, and we can argue about diagnosis and everything, but what I had been diagnosed with was bipolar disorder. It had turned into rapid cycling. And that meant that I didn't know who I was from one day to the next. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I didn't even trust myself. I didn't even trust my own mind. If I said, hey, I'll have tea with you on Tuesday at 11, I would sit back and go, yeah, we'll see if she shows up for that. There was just so much inconsistency. And it came to a point where I had to quit working and I had to move in with my mom at the age of 40. And that was a whole nother level of just torture, to have a career and then have to quit working and move in with my mom. But my brother reached out to me and he said, hey, there's this woman who 10 years prior resolved her bipolar disorder eating fatty animal meat. And there was something about it, and I honestly, I don't know. It wasn't a logical decision. It wasn't like I went and did all the evidence research and read all the scientific journal articles and, vetted this story. It was just, I was so broken and so done. And it just flipped a switch. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I just jumped in February 24th of 2019 and I stopped eating ramen noodles and Doritos and Oreos and ice cream and entire pizzas by myself. And I started eating only ribeyes and burgers and chicken wings with the skin on and salmon and pork. And then I was able to resolve my bipolar disorder by April of 2019. So my last manic or depressive episode was in April of 2019. Um, and the tricky part about my story is that 3 weeks into eating this way, I was actually hospitalized with a physical. What I had was acute dysphagia, where my throat just stopped swallowing. And so a logical person would say, I started this all meat diet and now I can't swallow. I need to go back to the Doritos and the ramen noodles. But I was already experiencing a little bit of a lift in that depression that I was like, I don't care. I choose mind over body. I don't care what dysfunction is happening in my body. I'm going for mental clarity. And so I found out I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. They did MRIs and a lumbar puncture, and by the end of that hospital stay, I couldn't walk without an assistive device, and I had delayed and slurred speech and more significant brain fog than I ever did with bipolar disorder. But I just kept going, and I don't really know what kept me going, except for it was just like this knowing. Like I just knew that Doritos and ramen noodles was not the answer. And so I just kept going on this path. And it was a great gamble because my last multiple sclerosis symptom was May 9th of 2019. I've had multiple MRIs, and the last MRI showed no new MS activity. And I went back to work full time in June of 2019. And now I get to coach and help people all over the world to reduce the inflammation in their brain and in their body by eating fatty animal meat. Oh, and I lost 120 pounds. So
Oh, just that.
it wasn't my goal. My goal was to survive, but it was kind of
Yes.
cool to lose 120 pounds.
And yeah, wow, it's so great to just hear your story summarized, Emily. Now, can I ask, did you deal with mental health issues your whole life, or was this kind of a sudden onset experience?
It progressively got worse with age, but yeah, I mean, I can look back into elementary, middle school, high school, college, definitely college, and there was constantly this lens that I saw the world through was that everyone is against me, nobody understands me, and everything is going to like it was just doom and gloom. Anxiety, depression. And so it wasn't that my circumstances changed, it was that my lens changed. Whenever I got the inflammation out of my brain, and then I could look at the situation and go, huh, this is going to be okay. I'm curious how this is going to unfold. And I just had this hope and this joy that I had never experienced my whole life. It was such a foreign emotion to have joy and hope in the middle of the muck. The muck didn't
Right.
change, my perspective did.
Yes. Yes, and I think that's something that so many people don't understand when they're in the inflammation, right? When they're in that place, because that's something I hear all the time, and I will get comments in social media or from, people I know. It's just like, "Well, how do you expect me to, like, come out of my mental illness symptoms, come out of my anxiety, or come out of my depression when everything is objectively so terrible?" And it's amazing that it's not asking you to be a Pollyanna and, like, put on these rose-colored glasses and pretend everything in life is amazing. Because yeah, objectively, there are a lot of difficult things about life, and a lot of people's circumstances are very adverse, but when you're looking at the world through a brain that is not inflamed, it's just so much easier to have a balanced perspective and not to get sucked into that doom and despair, but rather just face whatever adversity you're dealing with, with kind of this wise, balanced middle ground of like, okay, here's my situation. What do I do next? And still be able to appreciate the things in life that are beautiful because there's always something, right? There's always something to be grateful for or to appreciate. And you had such a dramatic shift. Like I'm astounded at uh, the pace of your recovery. Like in the course of months, you said the fog started to lift a little bit very quickly. So was the a relief in some of your thinking patterns the first thing you noticed, or how did it start for you?
Yeah, it was definitely just and it was a lift, and it whenever you're under so much darkness, any shift is noticeable, and so other people would probably be like, yeah, but you're still in depression, you're still in. Yeah, but it was a relief instead of worse, 'cause that was the trajectory I was used to. I was used to things always getting worse, and then a new pile of horrible the next month, and then a new pile of horrible the next month after that. Like, it just kept being more torturous. And then if you talk about emotional wounds, then you're just adding, insult to injury, and it just keeps perpetuating. And then you literally have this identity with this mental illness. Like I literally, that's what I thought who I was. And so whenever it lifted, I would say within 3 weeks, I noticed a difference. And it wasn't until the end of the fourth week, or no, the end of the third week, that I experienced joy for 10 minutes. And it was just like this little glimpse for 10 minutes. And I remember being like, what is this? Like, it was like a foreign emotion. And then it went away, and I was like, huh, like that's weird. And then the next day it was 15 minutes. And then the next day it was 20 minutes. And it just kept going until it became my all day, every day, that didn't matter what the circumstances. And let me tell you, my life did not get better. My situation did not get better, but my perspective got better. Um, and then I was able to continue to sort through the muck, and then to make better choices to where there was less muck there. And then it got better.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I hear so many similar descriptions of like the sun coming out from behind a cloud. I hear that. Or I've had people say like, it was weird. I was just driving my car and suddenly I realized I was singing, just like little things like that that just sneak into people's experience. So, do you mainly explain this dramatic shift that you had in terms of the framework of inflammation, or have you like, I'm just curious how you frame, like, what was happening in your brain that made this shift?
Yeah, I mean, because that's the only difference that there was. I mean, I had been on all sorts of psych meds, and I never had relief. Like, never once did I have a medication that I was just like, hey, this is kind of working. And I will credit medication in that I did not take my own life, and I did not end up back in the psych ward. So the medications worked for that purpose, but I was not functioning. And so the only difference was that I stopped eating the sugar and the processed foods, and I increased my fatty animal meat. And there's just something about fat, and I notice that even to this day, that whenever I'm not eating enough fat, I experience, just I don't feel as good. Um, but yeah, I would definitely attribute it to this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and, in terms of the MS, like, I just have to ask about this too because, obviously our nervous system and our brain are completely connected, right? Part of the same nervous system, and so it makes sense that if you were having psychiatric symptoms, you have neurological symptoms as well or start to develop. Did you have any hints that the MS was developing before this huge, episode a few weeks in?
Yeah, once the doctor said the word multiple sclerosis, I started, even in the hospital bed, I started researching, and I was blown away because I've had symptoms for 10 years, and I didn't know that it was MS. Like, it just wasn't on my radar, and I had been to the doctor for multiple things, but no one knew because it was just a tiny little piece of the puzzle, until you put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, and then you're like, "Oh, it's multiple sclerosis." But, my symptoms were, significant, nerve, like pins and needles, and joint pain. Like, I remember, I was diagnosed in March of 2019. In January of 2019, I moved my mother's entire house because she was hospitalized with a lung respiratory problem. I packed and moved her entire house, like an hour and a half away, and cleaned her whole house. And after I moved all the boxes, I felt like I had done CrossFit, like, on my elbows. Like, nothing else hurt, but my elbows hurt. Like, it was just so bizarre, and I'm like, "Why do my elbows hurt?" like, I should have my whole body being sore, but it was just in my elbows. Um, 10 years prior, I started out every, like, 6 months, and then every 3 months, and then every month. Randomly, I would just be eating, and I would not be able to swallow. I would just choke, and it wasn't consistent enough for me to go to the doctor or even to know why it was happening, but now I know that it was neurological, that my brain was short circuiting and forgetting to tell my throat to swallow. I had, difficulty with thermal regulation. Everyone else in the room would be fine, and I'm, like, sitting here with, like, a fan in my face, like, just, like, dying. Um, there's honestly, I'm sure a million markers on my blood work, but I didn't know. I didn't know to check that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you have a theory about why the symptoms got so much worse a couple weeks into carnivore?
Yeah, I actually had the pleasure of meeting, Sally K. Norton at a cabin in Tennessee this year, and she, just blew me away with understanding oxalate dumping. And so normal people would have probably gradually went into this way of eating, but because I was bipolar, I was a all or nothing kind of a girl. And so I jumped in feet first into the deep end. And because I did that, my body went into, I believe, oxalate dumping. And it wasn't that carnivore caused the MS, it was that it pulled back the curtain and revealed the MS. And so I think if I had went in a little bit slower, it wouldn't have exacerbated the MS so much. But I'm kind of glad that it did because then I knew what I was dealing with and I just kept eating fatty animal meat. And then, like I said, my last symptom was in May.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking you're gonna say something like that, either oxalates or, like, bacterial die-off, which can be super intense, and release so much toxins into your system, and I think I'm so glad that you're sharing this part of your story because I do think so many people are, like, a few weeks in or a month in, and they just have such a dramatic increase in their symptoms. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing to myself?" Like, hard 180, and completely understandably. I mean, when your symptoms get so much worse, it can be really scary. And there is a lot of rhetoric around like extreme diets, being dangerous and all this kind of stuff. So it's totally understandable why someone would just, back out if that happens. But I had not quite as dramatic an experience. I didn't end up in the hospital by any means, but I also had periods of being so much worse. Like I had very bad chronic fatigue. I was very hypersensitive. I had a lot of dysautonomia, sometimes like very low blood pressure, things like that. But I could at least like walk around, and like, run errands if I needed to and drive my car and things like that. And when I went through some of my more intense what I think were probably die off reactions now, as I started eliminating things out of my diet, I mean, I was functionally bedbound. Like I remember days where I was just like crawling to the bathroom because I was so weak and felt so sick. And friends and family at the time were kind of like, "What are you doing?" Like, but I also had this instinct of like, I feel like something's happening. Like I feel like something important is happening. Um, I don't know. I'm so curious if you just have any thoughts on if it's just an aspect of temperament or a quality of faith or um, anything that you feel like helps some people just stick it through, even when things get really dire. What helps you just stay?
Yeah, honestly, I attribute it to my mental illness, because bipolar disorder is so, stubborn, um, that they just don't care what the rest of the world thinks. And I was just like a woman on a mission. Like I was just super obsessed with this story that this woman had, and it was Amber O'Hearn that had the story and that wrote the book. And so whenever I started I honestly, I didn't have any doubt. Like, it was this knowing that came over me, and I was just determined. And then whenever I experienced the relief, I chased that like a heroin addict would chase their high. Like, I chased that experience of joy and peace like my life depended on it, 'cause it did. And then nothing could tell me, I mean, I didn't care if I walked again. I wanted to be able to experience mental clarity, because if you don't have your mind, what's the point? Like, you've gotta have your mind to be able to function through this life.
Life. Yeah, yeah, that's such a good point of just triaging, and I think a lot of people, they want everything to get better at the same time, but so often if you have a lot of complex things going on, some things sometimes have to go on the back burner while we focus on one thing, you know? And so I always tell people, like, we've got to get your gut healed, like, we've got to get your, digestive tract healed, we have to do that microbiome rebalancing. And yeah, certain things might get worse as we go through that process, like your fatigue might get worse, or certain other symptoms might get worse. But like we can come back and like fill in the blanks, once we have that foundation. And I had a really similar experience of just that conviction you're talking about. Like my inspiration story was Mary Reddick, who was my mentor through this process. And just the way she explained what I had to do just made sense to me. It all just kind of added up in a way that I was like, okay, that makes sense. And you do have to kind of surrender to some type of trust or faith or whatever you want to call it when you're in that kind of situation, because this stuff just does not heal overnight. Like it takes time and the road is curvy, for sure. But that being said, I mean, you did have a remarkably quick recovery. Oh my goodness. It sounds like am I calculating that right? Within like 6 months, you were going back to work and like functioning and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I have such a respect for stories like yours and Mary, where you guys suffered for so long. And yes, I suffered for the first 40 years of my life, but once I started animal fat and animal meat and stopped the pizza and the ramen noodles, then I experienced very fast results. I do wanna ask you about something, that happened to me recently, because I had to choose the physical body over the mental health, and it was so hard for me to make this decision, but, I had a urinary tract infection, turned into a severe kidney infection, and they were actually even testing me for sepsis to see if I was going into sepsis, and I had to have 2 rounds of antibiotics, and I knew in my knower and in my research that this was going to change the environment of my gut biome, and it did, and I experienced depression, this last month for the first time in 5 years. Um, and so if I had to do it again, I would take the antibiotics again because I needed them. I was in complete infection or inflammation in my body. Um, but is it's absolutely baffling to experience those thoughts of depression and almost experience it from a different place. Like, I know that's not me. And before, I thought that the depression, I thought it was me. But do you have any experience with how long it takes for people after they've had antibiotics to get rid of the depression, or what has been your experience?
Oh my gosh, yeah, my heart goes out to you for that decision, and I also think you made the right decision. I mean, when things get to the kidneys, I mean, when infections get that severe, like, that's why we are blessed to live in the Western world, right? And we do have access to emergency medical services, and we should never take that for granted. So, we have to do it sometimes. That's actually, like, a very legitimate reason to take antibiotics. There's so many people that it's like, "Oh, my ear hurts, my throat hurts, like, let me take antibiotics." It's like, "Oh my gosh, no." But yeah, risk for sepsis, absolutely take it. Um, yeah, I mean, what an incredible, example of how dependent our mental health is on the integrity of our gut microbiome. Like, you are a walking, talking example. No depression for 5 years and antibiotics, and the shift happens. Wow. Um, yeah, so the good gut bacteria that modulates our neurotransmitters can sometimes take 2 or 3 months to regrow. They're slow growing. That's part of the problem. And this is part of why antibiotics can take such a toll on our bacterial balance, because the beneficial ones that we want more of take several months to grow. And the ones that tend to cause chronic disease, including mental illness symptoms, tend to grow very fast, right? Because they're opportunists. So the best thing that you can do to speed up the process is to get probiotics in your body, whether it's supplements or fermented foods. That's really the best antidote to the situation, because we just want to crowd out the opportunistic bacteria as quickly as possible. Um, have you expanded your diet at all in the last 5 years? I'm curious. I mean, I wanna continue, like, what we can do for your gut health, but I'm so curious as a part of that, knowing, like, how your nutrition journey has looked over the last 5 years.
No, it's actually, stuck to pretty much lion diet. That's pretty much been my safe place, because I didn't realize how much of an addict I am, until I reintroduced yogurt, and I couldn't eat yogurt in a sober manner. I can't eat cheese in a sober manner. Like, it takes over my thoughts. If it's in my house, I'm like, it is funny because it can be in my house and be my family's, and I don't touch it. But if it's in my house and it's mine, like I bought it for me, then I can't stop thinking about it. And for some reason, and I'm sure that's more work that I can do around that addiction, but, with fatty animal meat, I don't have a problem. And so I haven't reintroduced many things because it's such a slippery slope for me that then it turns into more. It doesn't stop at yogurt. It continues with more. There's something about dairy. Um, and then
I was
I
gonna
think
ask that. Yeah, if it was specifically for dairy that you tend to get that more. Yeah. Yeah, I do know about the casein, protein, and how it can break down into casomorphine.
no. No.
Yeah, yeah, so some people actually are particularly sensitive to this, that the dairy protein can break down into a compound that mimics opiate,
Ah,
actually.
yeah. And I do. I get like a high when I eat them and I can't stop. And it's just so bizarre because I mean, I can sit there and eat a ribeye and I'm like, I push my plate away and I'm done. But I will sit there and eat the entire carton of yogurt like I am a crazy person. And then I'll drive to the store for another second carton. Like I can't, I have no governor.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's actually super common with a lot of people with, mental health symptoms or neurological symptoms, that dairy has this very, like, yeah, like, addictive effect on them, and it causes a lot of inflammation, because their body just doesn't process this compound correctly. So, yeah. Um, yeah, so I would say, dairy ferments are probably not the answer for you.
No.
But, uh fermented vegetables, or even the brine, like the water in the fermented vegetables, even if you don't want to go for any fiber for any reason, even just like the sauerkraut juice, can be really, really potent, and that can make a big difference in your gut health in these situations. So that might be something to experiment with.
Awesome. I have had that whenever I had an all beef brat that I got from Costco, and, actually, it was called a Polish sausage, but it's all beef, and I didn't have any reaction to any of this stuff, and so my brain went, "Oh, sausage, let's have some sauerkraut," and I reacted really well to that. So, thank you. I will definitely I've got some still in the fridge. I'll reincorporate that.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that's great. I and people who are, like, kinda long-term carnivores, that's like if you're gonna add any plant food back in, that's usually what I say. It's like fermented vegetables, because it's easy to digest. The fiber is like partially broken down already, and you just get this incredible variety and diversity of microbes that we're just not getting from our environment otherwise. I mean, even tribes that are mostly carnivore, like a lot of them are eating fermented dairy and they're like exposed to so much dirt and like natural microbes in their environment, and like we're just not getting that the same amount. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll definitely try that.
You try that. Yeah, yeah. Definitely let me know how your recovery goes for that. Yeah. Um so yeah, I'd love to hear just a little more about how this has all evolved into the work you do now. I know you do some nutrition coaching, but you also do a lot of trauma work with people now. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm I have my master's in clinical counseling, and before all of this, I practiced as a therapist. And then I realized when I went back to work full time that I don't belong in the mental health field the way it is right now because the licensing board and the insurance panels did not want me talking to my clients about food because I'm not a dietitian and I'm not a nutritionist. So I just said, forget the letters behind my name and call me a coach. And I moved my entire practice online. And now I'm able to help people all over the world. But I have had to set the boundary that I'm only going to help people that are willing to first triage their eating. Because if they're elbow deep in a bag of Doritos, they're not hearing what I'm saying. Like we're not able to go into what the deep trauma if your brain is inflamed. I mean, I can help, I can make you feel better, but it's basically like putting a band-aid on a broken leg. We got to change your perspective. And the only way that I've found, or the best way that I've found, is to reduce the inflammation in your brain. So that's what I do, and I actually help the really really miserable people um, who are just coming out of the psych ward, just coming out of the prison, who have had multiple suicide attempts, um, uh, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, like really, really, really difficult situations that a typical coach couldn't really hold all that they come to the table with. Because sometimes they cuss me out, they hang up on me, we have to process a lot at the beginning because the first 30 to 45 days is such a transition that they almost need somebody who understands crazy to walk them through that and not be like, that was offensive. Or, like, you were rude. Like, you can't hurt me. Like, come on, punch me. Like, it's okay. Um, and so I've loved it because it's so much more rewarding because I'm able to watch people transform before my very eyes. And it's so cool to see people who are completely hopeless shift into hopeful. And then to like, I'll never forget this girl. She suffered from severe bipolar disorder and she was just hanging out on her kitchen floor for a month. I mean, she just made a pallet on her kitchen floor and she would go to the kitchen and eat, go back to the floor, go to the bathroom, go back to the floor. And finally, her boyfriend sent her a video of me and she started working with me. And it was a rough month, lots of tears. It was very difficult because she was vegan and vegetarian in the past. And she was like, "This is crazy. Why am I doing this?" And I'm just you're a free woman, you can make your own choices. But I loved her through it, and then, the beginning of this year we worked together for over a year. Beginning of this year, she, just bought her first house. Um, she, got a six-figure, income, marketing job, for a corporation, and she's thriving, and she's like, "Emily, this completely changed the trajectory of my life." So, to take somebody from the kitchen floor to 6 figures and bought their own house, like, I just pinch me, like, I can't I will never stop doing this job, it's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, oh my gosh, seeing those transformations, it's just like that's the point of life, right? It's like seeing people have these incredible transformations, and you knew it was possible because you saw it in yourself, you know? And so similar to me, like I know that it's possible for people and I've seen it in my clients. It's just a matter of um uh providing the support that people need to keep putting one foot in front of the other through the process cuz yeah, it is rough.
Yeah, and
Um
one thing that comes up a lot, and I didn't realize this, until I kept hearing it, was especially the people who suffer from some pretty significant mental illness, um, they have said to me, on different occasions, different clients, "This is the first time I ever experienced unconditional love." And I'm just like, "Wow." That is the medicine that I bring to these situations is I tell them, "Give me your good, your bad, and your ugly. I can take it all." And I can reflect back to you in honesty, like, "Hey, you're being a bitch," or, "Hey, did you see how that thought process wasn't coherent?" I can reflect back to them, but I can also do it in love. That's right. Love is always with me. Love is my superpower, and love is literally the divine solvent of everything. If we can bring love into every situation, then they are able to have that reflected back to them, and they start loving themselves. And then it's almost like teaching them a new language. And all they've experienced is you're not good enough, you're worthless, you're stupid, you're why can't you be like your sister? Why can't you, just pull yourself together? And so experiencing love has been one of the most profound modalities for transformation for most of my clients.
yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. I mean, that's what it actually means to be a healer, right? And I think this is what our medical system and our mental health system has completely lost, right? It's completely sterile. Everyone's bound by these, professional codes of conduct, which, there's reasons why those exist, of course. But I think they've had a negative side effect of creating this situation where you have this professional relationship where there's no depth, and that sense like safety is built in relationships. Like yes, we can build safety in ourselves in our own world, but it's also in the people we interact with. And if we don't have safety, we can't heal. Oh, it's so beautiful. It doesn't matter what modality you're doing, like that's the heart of it.
Well, and they have to believe in themselves. And so if they're feeling worthless and useless and hopeless, then it's not an environment that's conducive to healing. Like, they have to believe in themselves and to know that they are worthy and that they are capable of healing. And just giving those little and I'm not gaslighting them, I'm not blowing smoke up their skirt, like, I'm not saying anything that is like you said, like Pollyanna, like, "Let's do our affirmations," like, everything is very authentic, and I reflect back to them the light that I see in them, and they're like, "How did you see that? Like, why do you know that I have good in my heart?" And I'm just like, "Because it's there, like, I'm just pointing it out." And they're like, "But I'm this, and this." I'm like, "Yeah, there's muck around the light, but you still have this light. Nothing changes the fact that you have that light." And then it just grows and grows and grows, and then the muck gets less and less, and then they're able to identify with that health and continue on to whatever they wanna do.
So sometimes if people, because I'm sure some people listening are in that place where they just cannot see their own plight, right? They're just so stuck in that place of, I'm worthless. I can't do anything. My body's broken. I'll never heal. My brain's broken, whatever it is. Do you think that's the key, is finding someone who can see their light, or is there something that you can do individually as well, like to start that process, would you say?
I definitely think it helps, to get somebody to see that and to talk about that with you, but I don't like externalizing the power. I feel that anyone, even just listening to this video, can absolutely recognize the power that they have within them. And it's really important for them to know that they have everything that they need. That's why my business is called Inner Clarity System, because it's this inner knowing that is inside of all of us. And you don't need anybody else. You have everything that you need within you. It's just hard sometimes to find that diamond in the rough, but it's there. And so I just encourage people to keep looking inside of them and to go, okay, what do I have that is my skill set? What do I have that is my value? And then focus more on that. But it does help to have a coach sometimes. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, yeah. No, but I appreciate that. I wanted to point that out because I think there are a lot of people who, um, well, I could just heal if I had X, Y, or Z, or, I won't be able to see any improvements until this, and this happens. And I just always want to question that when it comes up, right? Like there is always a crack in the wall, right? Where light can come through and you can start picking away at that crack.
Absolutely, and start where you're at, because, like, I had this one client who had, 9 diet sodas a day for, like, 20 years, and so he was just like, "Okay, I gotta stop the diet soda, and I'm gonna stop it and everything," and he had tried multiple times to stop the diet soda, and I said, "Why don't we just have it be in our plan that you have 8 diet sodas a day?" And he was like, "No, it's poison, it's horrible." And I'm like, "Yeah, but if the plan is that you stop and then you go back to it and that's not working, let's just try a different approach." And so for the whole next week, his goal was to have 8 diet sodas a day, and I was able to tell him, "You succeeded. Look at this. You did this. You are successful. You put your mind to it and you did it." And he's just looking at me like I'm a crazy person. And he's like, "Okay, like whatever." And I'm like, "This next week, let's do 7 diet sodas a day." And he was like, "Okay." And so he didn't even believe it himself. He was just like, "This is stupid." And then we did 7 diet sodas a day, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, look at you. You went from 9 to 7. Like, this is amazing." And he's just still looking at me like I'm crazy, and he's like, "Okay." Then we went to 5 a day, then we went to or 6 a day, 5 a day, 4 a day, and finally got him off of diet sodas. You have to meet yourself where you're at, because you can't take this at a pace that is faster than your central nervous system. Like, if your central nervous system is freaking out and I love this term, your psychological immune system, because your psychological immune system is gonna go, "She stopped drinking diet sodas. We're in DEFCON 5, like, shut everything down." Like, we're gonna go into panic mode. But if you gradually get those things out of your body, then you can take it at a much slower pace and still be strategic with your plan, and then do it at the pace of your central nervous system so you don't short circuit. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I'd be curious if you have anything else to say about the connection between chronic illness and perfectionism. Because I think this is kind of what you're getting at, right? And I think this is so correlated in my experience, right? If I can't do it perfect, then I can't do it at all and I'm a failure and I won't let myself feel anything positive or anything good. Um, yeah.
Yeah, the majority of people that I've worked with were perfectionists, and what I did was I almost, like, gave them a pass to not be perfect, and they were actually mad at me at first. And they were like, "No, I need you to be tougher on me. No, I need you to hold me accountable." And I'm like, "I'm that's not my job. I'm not here to bully you. I'm not here to berate you and tell you that you're a failure." How well did that work in the past? And they're like, "Not at all, but that's what I need." And I'm like, "Is it? Or do you need more love?" And they're like, "Okay, let's try this." And then love wins every time. And it is the love that I'm giving them, but what it is that I'm modeling for them how to love themselves. And then as they love themselves more, they're able to create an environment of healing because then their body and their brain knows, "Oh, we don't need to go into, like, freak out mode. Everything is okay. We are just gonna continue to heal. We are going to be safe, and we're not gonna be punished."
Yeah. Yeah, that is so well said. I mean, over and over and over again, the biggest correlate I see with the people who recover is it has nothing, I don't want to say nothing. It has very little to do with how strict you are on your diet and your daily routine. Yes, I 100% as a nutritionist believe that diet is a huge factor, right? And we do want to be focused on that when you're dealing with complex illness. But at the same time, I have seen people much less perfect on their protocols who did everything with this attitude of open heartedness and gratitude that you're talking about, of like, wow, I get to have this incredible transformation, right? That it's going to be hard, at times it's going to be brutal, but I see the potential for what I could become if I go on this journey. And those are the people that recover over and over and over again, regardless of how perfect they were. So you're right. It's all about the love. And it's all about the love you emit and the love you retain.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it can be applied in so many different areas of life. I find so often once we triage the physical, the mental health, then they're able to go into the relational, trauma that they're experiencing or childhood trauma or negative self-talk. It just it's like once you learn this, you can apply it into so many different areas of your life, even your finances. I mean, you can apply it into your environment. It's just endless once you get this concept of I am worthy and I am capable and I have all the power within me. I don't have to wait on somebody to come in and rescue me. I get to nurture myself. I get to take care of myself and rescue myself. And it's the best story ever. It's so much better than saying, "Oh, well, so and so helped me or so and so saved me." I saved me, and there's endless power in that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like that's such a lovely note to wrap up on. Do you want to share just a little more about your coaching business for people who might be interested in checking you out?
Yeah, if somebody's just trying to lose like 5 or 10 pounds, I'm not your coach. There's so many other people out there. I help the really, really miserable people. I help the people that feel like no doctors understand them, no psychiatrists understand them, their family members don't understand them, and that they just feel miserable on a level that they recognize that the normal people don't understand. And that's kind of my favorite part is whenever I have that initial session with them and they're like, you know what I'm talking about." I'm just like, yeah, I've been in darkness, I've been in misery. And so those are the people that I usually help, are the people that come from some pretty dark stuff. I helped a woman who was a child sex slave from age 7 to 14, and, the darkness was just, like, unspeakable, but being able to love and to bring light into such a dark place, is just the most rewarding thing in my job. So, anyway, those are the people that I usually help, and then, I I absolutely love being able to just do interviews like this and help people for free with these conversations, because the power is already within you. But I'm here if you wanna guide.
Beautiful. And we're both gonna be at Meatstock in May. So
Yay!
come to that. Yeah.
I'm so excited. Man, there is something about Meatstock. I went for the first time last year or this year, and, it's crazy the experience of the environment, of just being around so many people that are calm, and they're not agitated, they're not, there's not a lot of ego, like, they're there to help others, and, I'm so excited that you're gonna be there.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it. Honestly, I've heard so many wonderful things. It seems like a great community.
Yeah,
Excellent. Okay, Emily. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. I'm sure it's going to really hit home to a lot of people. So I so appreciate your time.
awesome. Thanks, Jen.